The plate was still warm in my hands when Diane stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor like a scream. "Give your brother your room, Emma. Give it to Tyler tonight. Or you pack your bags, and God help me, I will put them on the porch myself." The whole table went silent. The green beans were still steaming. My father sat there with a forkful of mashed potatoes halfway to his mouth, and he did not say one single word. Not one. He looked at his plate like the answer to my entire life was hidden somewhere in the gravy. Tyler, my 15-year-old stepbrother, had this little smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. The kind of smile a person makes when they already know how the story ends because they helped write it. And me, I just stood there holding a plate I had cooked in a kitchen I had cleaned, in a house I did not yet know was legally mine. If you had told me a year earlier that I would end up in a lawyer's office reading a letter my dead mother wrote when she still had her hair, I would have laughed at you. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Because you cannot understand why that night broke me until you understand everything I gave up to sit at that table in the first place. My name is Emma Callahan. I am 19 years old, and I grew up in a 2-story colonial on Maple Crest Lane, in a quiet suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio. White house, black shutters, a maple tree in the front yard that turned the color of fire every October. It is the kind of street where everybody waves and nobody actually knows what is happening behind the doors. I know that now better than anybody. My mother's name was Sarah. She died of ovarian cancer when I was 11 years old, and I want you to understand something about her before I tell you about the people who came after. My mother was the warmest person I have ever known. She smelled like vanilla and pencil shavings because she was always baking something or sketching something. She was the one who painted the little stars on my bedroom ceiling, hundreds of them, in gold and pale silver, so that the last thing I saw before I slept was a sky she made for me with her own 2 hands. She got sick when I was 10. It happened fast, the way the bad ones do. One spring she was chasing me around the backyard with the garden hose. And by the next spring she was a shape under a blanket on the couch, whispering to me that everything was going to be okay. I believed her. Because she was my mother and mothers do not lie. Except she did lie that once because nothing was okay. She died on a Tuesday in April. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had a spelling test the next day, and my father let me stay home. And it was the first time in my life an adult told me I did not have to be strong. For 2 years, it was just me and my dad. His name is Mark. He worked as a logistics manager for a shipping company, long hours, early mornings. The kind of job that eats a man slowly. Those 2 years were hard, but they were honest. We ate cereal for dinner sometimes. We watched too much television. We did not talk about my mother because it hurt too much. And looking back, I think that silence was the first crack in him. My father was a man who avoided pain the way some people avoid the deep end of a pool. He would rather stand in the shallow water his whole life than risk going under, and that instinct, that soft, quiet cowardice, is the thing that eventually cost us everything. Then, when I was 13, he met Diane. Diane sold houses. That is the first thing anybody learned about her because it was the first thing she told them. She was polished in a way my mother never cared to be, with a manicure that never chipped and a laugh she could turn on and off like a faucet. She had a son named Tyler, who is 2 years younger than me. And I want to be fair here. I really do, because for the first year, she was kind. She brought me a sweater in my favorite color. She asked about my day. She let me pick the restaurant. I was 13 and grieving and starving for a woman's attention, and she fed me just enough of it to make me trust her. They got married in a small ceremony at a country club when I was 14. I wore a lavender dress, and I threw the petals, and I remember thinking that maybe, I was getting a second chance at a family. Diane and Tyler moved into our house on Maple Crest Lane. And that, I would learn much later, is exactly what Diane had been counting on. Because that house was never just a house. But I did not know that yet. I only knew that my mother's stars were still on my ceiling, and that as long as I could see them, part of her was still with me. Let me tell you about my room. Because everything in this story orbits around that one room like planets around a dying sun. It was the second largest bedroom in the house, at the end of the hall. with two windows that caught the morning light. Under the window, my grandfather had built a window seat by hand, a solid oak bench with a cushion my mother sewed herself. Inside my closet, on the back of the door, there were pencil marks climbing up the wood, each one dated in my mother's handwriting. Emma, age 4. Emma, age 7. Emma, age 10. The last one was from the summer before she got sick. And I could never bring myself to add another mark after that, because I did not want the line to keep going without her. And the ceiling was her sky. That room was not a room. It was the last letter my mother ever wrote me, and she wrote it in stars and pencil marks and the smell of cedar. So when I tell you what they tried to take, understand that they were not asking for 4 walls and a door. They were asking me to hand over the last piece of my mother I had left. For the first couple of years, things were tense but survivable. Diane had opinions about everything. My clothes were too plain. My grades were fine, but Tyler's were exceptional, apparently, though I never once saw his report card. She rearranged the kitchen, so I could not find anything. She repainted the living room a cold gray and took down the photos of my mother and me, packing them into a box in the garage that I later found and hid in my closet. When I asked her about it, she smiled and said, "Oh, honey, we just needed a fresh start. You understand." And I said I did, because I was 15 and I wanted peace more than I wanted to be right. That was my first mistake. There would be many. If there is one thing I want you to take from my story, it is this. Peace that you buy by making yourself smaller is not peace. It is just a slow surrender. And the person taking your ground will always come back for more. By the time I was 16, the pattern was set in stone. I was the household's spare set of hands. I did the dishes every night. I did the laundry, all of it, including Tyler's, who was old enough to do his own but never did because Diane said he was so busy with school. I cooked dinner 3 nights a week because Diane worked late showings and my father worked late everything. I babysat Tyler, though he was 13 and did not need a babysitter. So much as a witness to make sure he did not burn the house down playing with the stove. And I did it all for free, out of a desperate, stupid hope that if I was useful enough, I would be loved. I got a part-time job at a pharmacy the week I turned 16, ringing up prescriptions and stocking shelves after school. I want you to know why. It was not for fun money. It was because when I needed a new pair of shoes, Diane would sigh and say the family budget was tight, and then that same week Tyler would come home with new sneakers that cost $200. So I bought my own shoes, my own school supplies, my own everything. My father never noticed. Or he noticed and decided it was easier not to see. Here is a moment I think about a lot. Junior year, I got into a summer program at Ohio State, a real one for students interested in nursing. It was competitive and I got in and there was a partial scholarship, but it still cost money for materials and transportation. I asked my father at dinner, hopeful, my heart in my throat. Before he could even answer, Diane cut in. "Mark, we already committed to Tyler's travel hockey this summer. We can't do both. It wouldn't be fair to Tyler." Fair to Tyler. That phrase. I heard it so many times it stopped sounding like words and started sounding like a door closing. I did not go to the summer program. Tyler went to hockey camp in Michigan for 3 weeks and came home having quit hockey entirely by August. Nobody said a word about the money that time. I could give you 100 of these moments. The Christmas where Tyler got a gaming computer and I got a gift card to the same pharmacy where I worked. The parent-teacher conference my father skipped because Diane needed him to drive Tyler to a friend's house. The way Diane started calling Tyler my boy's father's pride and joy, in a way that made it clear I was not anybody's pride. And not really anybody's joy either. But I do not want to just list wounds. I want you to see the shape of what was happening because the shape is the warning, and I missed it. The shape was this. Slowly, carefully, one small concession at a time, I was being erased from my own home. And the thing about being erased slowly is that you do not notice it happening. You just wake up one day and realize there is less and less room for you in a house that used to be entirely yours. The first real warning sign, the one I should have caught, came in the spring I turned 18. I was doing the laundry, which was my job, and I went to grab a dryer sheet from a utility drawer in the mudroom. Diane kept coupons and takeout menus and random papers in there. And there, sitting right on top, was a document with our address printed across the header. It was a comparative market analysis. I did not know the term then, but I recognized our address and I recognized the number at the bottom, because it was the biggest number I had ever seen attached to something my family owned. $412,000. My stomach did something strange. I put it back exactly where I found it, and I told myself it was nothing. Diane was a realtor. Realtors ran the numbers on everything, right? It was probably just habit. That is what I told myself, and I believed it, because the alternative was too frightening to hold. But I remembered that number. I want you to remember it too. $412,000. It matters later. The second warning sign came a few weeks after that, and I could not explain it away so easily. It was late, near midnight, and I had come downstairs for water. The kitchen was dark, but the light was on in the little office off the dining room, the one that used to be my mother's sewing room. The door was cracked, and I heard Diane's voice, low and sharp, the way she talked when she thought no one could hear the real her. I told you, we can't touch the equity while she's still living here. The whole thing is tangled up because of that account. Once she's out, once she's 18 and gone, we deal with the paperwork and it's done. Mark just needs to grow a spine and handle his own daughter. I stood frozen in the dark hallway with an empty glass in my hand. I did not understand most of it. Equity, account, paperwork. But I understood 4 words with perfect, terrible clarity. Once she's out. She meant me. There was a plan, and I was a problem the plan needed to solve. And my own father was somewhere in that sentence, being told to grow a spine and handle me. I went back upstairs without my water. I lay under my mother's stars, and I told myself I had misheard. That is the last thing I want to tell you about who I was before that dinner. I was a girl who kept telling herself she had misheard, because hearing correctly would mean my family was not my family at all. Some truths you would rather starve than swallow. Now let me tell you about the dinner. The real one. The one from the beginning of the story, where Diane stood up so fast her chair screamed against the floor. It was a Thursday in early autumn. I had cooked because it was one of my nights. Baked chicken, roasted potatoes, green beans. My mother's recipe for the potatoes, though nobody at that table knew or cared where it came from. Tyler was 15 now, a sophomore in high school, taller than me and twice as sure of himself. My father looked tired, the way he always looked. A man being slowly hollowed out by a life he did not have the courage to change. We were maybe 10 minutes into eating when Diane set down her fork with a click and said, in that bright false voice, "So, Tyler is getting older, and a growing young man needs his own space. A proper space. We've decided he's going to take the big bedroom at the end of the hall. Emma, you can move your things into the guest room. It's plenty for you. The big bedroom at the end of the hall. My mother's stars. My grandfather's window seat. The pencil marks in the closet." I put down my own fork very slowly. My hands were shaking, but my voice, somehow, came out steady. That's my room. My mom decorated that room. I'm not moving into the guest room. The guest room, by the way, was barely bigger than a closet. On the north side of the house, where the sun never reached. She was not offering me a room. She was offering me a demotion in my own home, so her son could have the thing my mother made for me. Diane's smile did not move, but her eyes did. They went flat and cold. "Excuse me?" I said no. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they could all hear it. "That's my room. It has been my room my whole life. Tyler can have the guest room if he needs more space. Or the basement. There's plenty of space down there." And that is when she stood up. That is when the chair scraped. That is when she pointed a finger at me across the chicken I had baked with my own hands and said the words that ended one chapter of my life and began another. "Give your brother your room, Emma. Give it to Tyler tonight. Or you pack your bags, and God help me, I will put them on the porch myself." I looked at my father. This is the part one need you to sit with, because it is the part that haunts me. I looked at my father, the man who held my hand at my mother's funeral. The man who let me stay home from a spelling test because I did not have to be strong, and I waited for him to be my father. I waited for him to stand up. I waited for him to say, "That is enough. That is Emma's room. Sit down." I waited for one word. He put down his fork. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. And he said, quietly, without looking at me, "Emma, just do what she says. It's easier. Please don't make this a whole thing. Don't make this a whole thing." Something in my chest went very quiet and very cold. It was not the loud kind of heartbreak, the kind with tears and screaming. It was the other kind, the kind where you feel a door close so softly you almost do not hear it, and you understand that you are now on the other side of it, alone. My father had chosen. He had been choosing for years, in 1,000 small ways. But this was the first time he did it out loud, at the table, over dinner, with everyone watching. I stood up. I did not yell. I did not cry, not yet. I looked at all three of them. At Diane's triumphant face and Tyler's little smirk and my father's downcast eyes, and I said, "Okay. Just that. Okay." And I walked upstairs to the room with the stars, and I locked the door. And I sat on the window seat my grandfather built, and I finally let myself shake. But here's the thing that changed everything. Sitting there in the dark, I remembered that phone call. Once she's out. The equity. The account. I remembered the $412,000. And through the fog of my hurt, one clear thought rose up like a fish breaking the surface of black water. This is not about a room. Nobody screams like that over a bedroom. This is about something bigger. And I am the only one at this table who does not know what it is. I decided, right there on my grandfather's window seat, that I was going to find out. There was only one person left in the world I trusted. My grandmother. My mother's mother. Her name is Ruth. And she lived about 40 minutes away in a little brick house full of my mother's old things. After my mom died, Diane had slowly pushed Grandma Ruth out of our lives. Holidays got too complicated. Visits got hard to schedule. I saw her maybe twice a year, always with Diane hovering. But I still had her number, and I still remembered the sound of her voice, and that night, after the house went quiet, I called her. She picked up on the second ring, even though it was almost midnight. "Emma? Sweetheart, what's wrong?" And I told her everything. The room. The ultimatum. My father's face. The phone call I had overheard about the equity and the account. I expected her to comfort me, to tell me it would all blow over. Instead, there was a long silence on the line. And when Grandma Ruth spoke again, her voice had changed completely. It was hard now. Careful. The voice of a woman who has been waiting a long time for a phone call she hoped would never come. "Emma," she said, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do not sign anything. Do you understand me? No matter what they put in front of you, no matter what they say, you do not sign a single piece of paper. Can you come see me tomorrow, after your classes? Not the house. Come here. There are things about that house and about your mother that you have a right to know, and that they have kept from you for far too long." I sat up straight in the dark. "Grandma, what things?" "Tomorrow," she said. "In person. And, Emma, bring a bag with a few days of clothes just in case. Don't tell them where you're going." I did not sleep that night. I lay under my mother's stars, and I felt the whole floor of my life tilt beneath me. Because Grandma Ruth did not sound surprised. She sounded prepared. And that is a very different thing. The next afternoon, I drove to Grandma Ruth's little brick house with a duffel bag in my trunk. I had gone to my community college classes in a daze, unable to hear a word my professor said. When I pulled into her driveway, she was already standing at the door. And she pulled me into a hug that smelled like my childhood, like vanilla and old books and my mother. And I almost broke down right there on the porch. She sat me at her kitchen table and put a cup of tea in front of me that I did not drink. And then she went to a closet, and she came back with a leather folder, worn soft at the edges. And she set it down between us like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Emma," she said, "what do you know about who owns your house?" I blinked. "Dad owns it. And Diane, I guess. It's their house." Grandma Ruth shook her head slowly. "No, sweetheart. It is not their house. It has never been their house. She opened the folder. Your grandfather and I bought that house on Maplecrest Lane in 1990, when your mother was a little girl. We paid it off before she graduated high school. And when your mother married your father, we did not give it to your father. We gave it to her. To Sarah. The deed was in your mother's name, and your mother's name only. I felt something cold moving through me. But Mom died. Yes. Grandma Ruth's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. And your mother was a very smart woman. Emma. Smarter than anyone gave her credit for. When she got sick, when she knew where things were heading, she came to me and to a lawyer, and she set everything up so that no one could ever take from you what was rightfully yours. She did not leave that house to your father. She left it to you, in a trust. The word landed in the middle of the table, like a stone dropped in still water. A trust. Your father was given what's called a life estate, Grandma Ruth went on, and I could tell she had practiced this, had waited years to say it right. It means he had the legal right to live in the house, to raise you in it until you turned 25. But he did not own it.
He could not sell it. He could not borrow against it.
He could not put anyone else's name on it. And when you turned 25, or if he ever violated the terms, the house passes to you completely. Free and clear. It is your house, Emma. It has been your house since the day your mother died. You have been paying for your own shoes with your own money while sleeping in a home you own outright. And they never told you. That is what they've been hiding. I could not speak. $412,000. Once she's out, the equity, the account. It was all reorganizing itself in my mind into a picture so ugly I could barely look at it. There's more, Grandma Ruth said quietly, and she pulled out another paper. Your mother did not just leave you the house. She left a separate account, managed by the trust, to pay for the upkeep, property taxes, repairs, insurance. And, Emma, she left money in that same trust earmarked for your education. Tens of thousands of dollars. Your college was paid for before you ever set foot in a classroom. I thought about the summer nursing program I did not get to attend because it wouldn't be fair to Tyler. I thought about the gift card to the pharmacy where I worked. I thought about buying my own school supplies at 16. And I felt something I had never really felt before in my life. Not sadness. Rage. Clean, clear, righteous rage. Grandma, I whispered, where did the education money go? She looked at me for a long moment. That, she said, is exactly what we're going to find out. Because I have not been the trustee for 3 years. When your father remarried, he petitioned the court to have himself made trustee. And a judge who did not look closely enough granted it. I fought it. I lost. And ever since, I have not been able to see a single statement. But your mother named a backup. A man named Daniel Alvarez, the attorney who set all of this up. And Emma, if your father has been doing what I think he has been doing, Mr. Alvarez is going to be very, very interested to hear from you. That night, I did not go home. I slept in the guest room of my grandmother's brick house, in a bed with my mother's old quilt on it. And for the first time in years, I felt something like safety. My phone buzzed at 11 at night. It was Diane. Where are you? The message said. Tyler needs to move his things in this weekend. Stop being dramatic and come home. I did not answer. Let her wonder. For once in my life, I had a card she did not know I was holding. Monday morning, Grandma Ruth and I went to see Daniel Alvarez. His office was in a small brick building downtown. All dark wood and leather chairs, and the smell of coffee and paper. He was an older man, maybe 60, with white hair and sharp eyes, and a way of listening that made you feel like every word you said mattered. When Grandma Ruth introduced me, he stood up very slowly and looked at me for a long time. You look just like your mother, he said finally. She would be very proud of you for being here. Then he sat down, and he opened a file that had my name on it, and everything came apart. Emma, he said, I set up your mother's trust 19 years ago. It was airtight. Your mother wanted it that way. She was afraid. Even then, that if anything happened to her, someone might try to take advantage. She was, I'm sorry to say, exactly right. He pulled out a stack of documents. when your father had himself appointed trustee 3 years ago. I lost my ability to oversee the accounts directly. But the trust document names me as successor trustee. And it also gives me the right at any time to request a full accounting. I have requested one. Your father has been stalling for 2 weeks. I think we both know why now. He turned a page. The property itself is intact. He couldn't sell it or borrow against it, though not for lack of trying. I have records here of 2 separate attempts to open a home equity line of credit against the property. Both denied because the title search revealed the trust. That is almost certainly the equity your stepmother was referring to on that phone call. They wanted to pull cash out of your house, and the trust your mother built stopped them cold. Every single time. I thought of Diane's voice in the dark. We can't touch the equity while she's still living here. Now I understood. It was not that they needed me gone to move Tyler in. It was that as long as I lived there, the trust protections were harder to challenge. They needed me out of the house, so they could argue I had abandoned my interest. So they could try to unwind the whole thing and finally get their hands on that $412,000. That's the good news, Mr. Alvarez said. The house is safe, and it is yours. He paused. Now here is the bad news, and I want you to prepare yourself, Emma. The upkeep account and the education fund are a different story. Those are liquid. Those are accessible to the trustee, and the trustee has a legal duty to spend them only for your benefit. I pulled what I could through the bank, and I am very sorry to tell you that both accounts have been almost entirely drained. The room went quiet. Grandma Ruth reached over and took my hand. Drained how? I asked. Mr. Alvarez slid a printout across the desk. Over the past 3 years, roughly $60,000 has been withdrawn from your education fund and the maintenance account combined. I traced the transfers. A private school tuition payment, though you attend public school. A lease on a luxury SUV registered to Diane Callahan. A vacation package to Florida. Payments to a hockey program. Home renovations to the kitchen and living room.
He looked up at me.
None of it was for you, Emma. Every dollar your mother set aside to protect you was spent making the lives of the people who wanted you gone more comfortable. That is not just betrayal. Legally, that is a breach of fiduciary duty. It may be theft. I want to tell you I cried. I did not. I sat there very still, and I thought about the gray paint over my mother's photos and the box in the garage, and the shoes I bought myself and the summer program I never got to attend. And I understood with total clarity that my father and Diane had been living off my dead mother's love for me while telling me there was never quite enough to go around. What do? I asked. My voice did not shake. I was past shaking. Mr. Alvarez folded his hands. First, you do not go back to that house, not alone, not to be pressured into signing anything. Second,
You let me do my job.
as successor trustee, I am going to petition the court to remove your father as trustee for gross breach of his duties, and to have myself reinstated. Third, we are going to demand a full accounting and repayment of every dollar improperly spent. And fourth, Emma. He looked at me steadily. Once you turn 25, that house is entirely yours no matter what. But given what your father has done, we have grounds to argue for early termination of his life estate. He violated the terms of the trust. He may not have the right to live there much longer. I need you to understand what that means. If we win, your father and his wife and stepson could be required to leave the house. Your house. Are you prepared for that? I thought about it. I thought about it for a long time. And I want to be honest with you about what I felt. Because this is the part where a lot of stories go off the rails into some fantasy of perfect revenge. And I do not want to lie to you. I did not feel triumph. I felt grief. Because to win, I had to accept that the family I had been trying so hard to be good enough for had never existed. My father was not going to stand up for me at the last second. There was no version of this where he apologized, and it all went back to how it was before my mother got sick. That family died on a Tuesday in April when I was 11, and I had spent 8 years trying to resurrect a ghost. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. I want to tell you about the day the papers were served, because it is the day I saw my father clearly for the first and last time. Mr. Alvarez had advised me to be somewhere safe and public when it happened, so I was at Grandma Ruth's. But I heard about it in real time because my father called me 11 times. And then Diane called me 9 times, and then the texts started coming in. And I finally read them, sitting at my grandmother's kitchen table, and they told me everything I needed to know about who these people really were. My father's first message was, "Emma, what have you done? Do you have any idea what you've started? Call me right now." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I should have protected you." "What have you done?" As if I were the one who spent $60,000 of my dead mother's money on a luxury SUV. Diane's messages were worse. "You ungrateful little snake. After everything this family did for you, we took you in, we fed you, we clothed you." I actually laughed out loud reading that one, a sharp, ugly laugh. Because I had clothed myself since I was 16. "You are going to regret this. When we're done, you won't have a family left at all." I did not respond to any of them. Mr. Alvarez had been very clear. Every word I said could be used, so I said nothing. I let the lawyers speak for me. That, right there, is the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is loud. Justice is quiet and patient and follows the paper. I chose the paper. Over the next several weeks, the truth kept coming out in pieces, each one a small turning point, each one a fresh cut. Grandma Ruth and I went back to the house one afternoon, with Mr. Alvarez's blessing and a locksmith, to retrieve my belongings while Diane and my father were both at work. And it was there, going through the drawers of the office, the room that used to be my mother's sewing room, that I found the last piece of the puzzle. In the bottom drawer of the desk, in a manila folder, there was a document titled Disclaimer of Interest. It was dated 8 months earlier. It had my name typed at the bottom, with a blank line for my signature. And clipped to it was a sticky note in my father's handwriting that said, "Get Emma to sign around her 18th birthday. Frame as routine. Do not mention trust. Do not mention trust." I sat down on the floor of that office and I read those words over and over. This was not a heat of the moment thing. This was not Diane losing her temper at dinner. This was a plan, written down, months in advance, in my own father's handwriting. They had been going to trick me into signing away my entire inheritance around my 18th birthday, framed as a routine formality, and when I had not understood enough to sign. When I had slipped through that trap by pure luck, they had moved to Plan B. Get her out of the house. Give her room to the boy. Push and push until she leaves on her own. And the dinner, the ultimatum, the finger pointed across the chicken, that was not an explosion. It was a strategy. Diane had not snapped. Diane had executed. I brought that document to Mr. Alvarez, and I watched his eyebrows rise. And he said quietly, "Emma, this changes things. This is evidence of intent. This shows premeditation. A deliberate plan to defraud you of your inheritance. This is very, very good for us. And very, very bad for them." The case did not go to a dramatic trial. Real life rarely does. What happened instead was slower and, in a way, more crushing for them. Faced with the disclaimer document, the drained accounts, the trace transfers, and the 2 denied loan attempts, my father's lawyer, who was expensive and knew a losing hand when he saw one, advised him to settle. Because the alternative was a judge and possibly a prosecutor. And words like fraud and fiduciary breach and misappropriation of trust funds attached permanently to my father's name. The settlement terms were these. My father was removed as trustee, and Mr. Alvarez was reinstated. My father and Diane were ordered to repay the $60,000 taken from my accounts. And because they did not have $60,000 sitting around, they had to sell Diane's luxury SUV, cash out a retirement account, and set up a payment plan for the rest. And the life estate. This is the part one still feel in my chest. Because my father had so clearly and deliberately violated the terms of the trust. The court agreed to terminate his right to live in the house. He had 90 days to move out. The house on Maple Crest Lane was mine. Fully, legally, completely mine, 5 years early. Because he had broken the trust so badly, there was nothing left to protect him. I need to tell you about the last conversation I had with my father, because I think it is the most important part of this whole story, and it is not what you might expect. He asked to meet me. Just the two of us, no lawyers, no Diane. Mr. Alvarez advised against it, but said the choice was mine, and I decided I needed it. Not for him. For me. We met at a diner off the highway, a neutral place, and he looked 10 years older than he had at that dinner. Smaller, somehow. Deflated. He did not apologize. I want you to know that, because I know some of you are hoping this ends with a tearful reconciliation. And I promised you I would be honest. He did not say he was sorry. What he said was, "You didn't have to take it this far. We're your family. We could have worked this out at home." And I looked at my father across a sticky diner table. And I finally said the thing I had been holding in my whole life. Dad, you stopped being my family the moment you told me to give away Mom's room and not make it a whole thing.
No.
That's not even true.
You stopped a long time before that.
I just kept hoping you'd come back. Every day for 8 years I hoped. And you never did. I took a breath. You spent Mom's money on Diane's car. You wrote a note telling yourself to trick me into signing away everything Mom left me. You planned to put your own daughter out on the street so you could get to the equity. I didn't take anything too far, Dad. I just stopped letting you take from me. He did not have an answer for that. He looked down at his coffee, the same way he looked down at his plate that night at dinner. And in that moment I understood that my father was not an evil man. He was a weak one, which is sometimes worse. Because a weak man will let a strong and cruel person do terrible things while he keeps his own hands clean and his own eyes on his plate. Diane pulled the trigger, but my father loaded the gun and looked away. And I could not save him from himself anymore. I had spent my whole childhood trying, and it had nearly cost me my mother's last gift. I got up. I left money on the table for my own coffee, because I have paid my own way since I was 16, and I was not about to stop now. And I walked out, and I did not look back. And that is the last real conversation I have had with my father.
Now.
I know what some of you are thinking. Emma, you got the house. You won. So what happened next? Did you throw them out? Did you sell it? Did you dance in the front yard while Diane loaded a moving truck?
No.
And here is where I want to talk to you honestly about what justice actually looks like when it is over. Because it does not feel the way the movies promise. My father and Diane and Tyler moved out of the house on Maple Crest Lane. I did not stand there and watch.
I did not need to.
Diane, I heard through Grandma Ruth, was furious to the very end, blaming everyone but herself. Telling anyone who would listen that I was a greedy child who stole a house from my grieving father. Let her tell that story. I know the truth, and so do you, and so does a court of law. Tyler is the one I think about sometimes with something other than anger. He was 15. He did not set up the plan. He smirked at that dinner, yes, and he benefited from my erasure, yes. But he was also a kid raised by Diane, taught by Diane, shaped by her the way I was shaped by my grief. I do not owe him forgiveness, but I have let go of hating him. Because hating a boy for being poorly raised is like hating the rain for being wet. I hope he grows up to be better than the people who made him. That is all I can offer. And it is more than they offered me. I did not sell the house. Not right away. I moved back in. Alone at first, then with Grandma Ruth, who sold her little brick place and came to live with me. And it turned out we were exactly the two people who should have been in that house all along. The first thing we did was go up to my room. My mother's stars were still on the ceiling. The window seat was still under the window. And the pencil marks were still on the back of the closet door. Emma age 4, Emma age 7, Emma age 10. And Grandma Ruth handed me a pencil, and she said, "I think it's time." And I stood against that door, 19 years old, and I made a new mark. Emma, age 19, home. The education fund got repaid, slowly, through the settlement. I used it exactly the way my mother intended. I enrolled full-time in the nursing program at Ohio State, the real one, the one I was told there was never enough money for. I am going to be a nurse. I am going to spend my life taking care of people the way my mother took care of me in her final months, the way no one took care of me after she was gone. And every semester, my tuition is paid by the woman who loved me enough to see this coming from her deathbed and build a wall of paper around me that even the people I trusted most could not tear down. I want to tell you about the letter because I saved it for last on purpose. Among the trust documents, Mr. Alvarez gave me a sealed envelope. My mother had written it when she set up the trust, and she had left instructions that it only be given to me if the trust protections were ever triggered. If, in other words, someone ever tried to take from me what she left. She knew. Somehow, dying, she knew. I am not going to read you the whole thing because some things belong only to me, but there was one line in it that I think about every single day. And I want to share it with you because I think it might be the thing you need to hear too. She wrote, "Emma, my love, if you are reading this, then someone has tried to take your home. And I am so sorry I am not there to stand between you and them. But listen to me. I already stood between you and them years ago, with everything I had left. You do not have to earn your place in this world by making yourself small. You never did. Your worth is not a bill you pay by giving pieces of yourself away. It is a gift, and it is yours, and I built you a house to prove it. Take up space, my darling. I made room for you before you were even born, and no one gets to take it away. I made room for you. Take up space." I had spent 8 years doing the exact opposite. I had spent 8 years shrinking, apologizing, giving up my room, my money, my summer, my mother's photos, my own name at the dinner table, all to buy a peace that was never real. From people who mistook my kindness for weakness and my patience for permission. And the whole time, folded in a lawyer's drawer, my mother was telling me to stop, to take up space, to stand in the home she built and refuse to be moved. So let me tell you what I learned, because if you have made it this far with me, you deserve the lesson I paid so much to learn. The people who love you do not ask you to disappear. Real love does not require you to give up your room, your voice, your inheritance, or your sense of self as the price of belonging. If someone tells you that peace is only possible when you are smaller, quieter, and easier to erase, that is not a family. That is a hostage situation with a nicer dinner table. And the terrible trick of it is that it happens slowly, one reasonable seeming concession at a time, until you wake up a guest in your own life. I also learned that silence is a choice. And my father made it every single day. He was not cruel like Diane. He was just quiet. He just looked at his plate. And I need you to understand that the person who looks away while you are being harmed is not innocent. Their silence is the permission the cruelty needs to keep going. Do not mistake a person's gentleness for goodness if that gentleness never once shows up to protect you. And the last thing, the most important thing, documentation, patience, and the truth will beat cruelty almost every time. But only if you are brave enough to stop hoping the cruel people will suddenly become kind. I did not get my home back by screaming at Diane. I got it back by making one phone call to the one person who still loved me, by refusing to sign a paper I did not understand, and by letting the truth walk slowly and steadily into a courtroom until there was nowhere left for the lies to hide. You do not need revenge. Revenge is what people reach for when they do not believe justice will come. You need the truth. And you need to be willing to protect yourself even when the people hurting you share your last name. I live in my mother's house now. I sleep under her stars. My grandmother is downstairs. And there is always something baking, and the whole place smells like vanilla and pencil shavings again, the way it did before everything went gray. I am going to be a nurse. I am going to be okay. Better than okay. I am going to take up space for the rest of my life, exactly the way she told me to. My mother could not be here to stand between me and the people who tried to erase me, but she stood there anyway years before, with a lawyer and a trust and a letter and an unshakable faith that her daughter was worth protecting. That is the kind of love that outlives a body. That is the kind of love I hope every single one of you finds, or better yet, becomes. So here's my question for you, and I really do want to know. So please tell me in the comments below. Have you ever stayed quiet and made yourself smaller to keep the peace with someone who is only ever going to take more from you? And when did you finally decide to take up space again? I am reading every single one. Because I know now that none of us should have to sit at that table alone. Thank you for being here with me. Take up space out there. Somebody built room for you, even if you have not found the letter yet.